Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU Audiobooks, Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Social Sciences, SOS, Master's Degree Programs, MA in Psychology, MAP, Second Year, MPC 022 Assessment in Counseling and Guidance, Block 1 Introduction, Unit 4 Determination of Aspects to be Covered, 4.0 Introduction. Psychological assessment plays a major role in the process of guidance and counseling. The counselor needs data about the individual to be able to provide effective counseling. There are different aspects of assessment which will be discussed in this unit. However, one thing can be noted here. Assessment should always be comprehensive, taking into account information from other sources. Also, since the goal of assessment is its proper and effective use for the purpose of guidance and counseling, you need to develop a clear understanding of the various tests and their assessment procedure. You need to have the skill of selecting an appropriate test related to mental ability, personality, interest, aptitude, and achievement. 4.1 Objectives. After going through this unit, you will be able to times know the different approaches to assessment, times identify different steps of assessment in counseling, times identify the components of assessment, times describe the various skills required for assessment in counseling, and times discuss the areas in which assessment can be done. 4.2 Psychological assessment, objective and subjective approach. In the previous units you have studied the meaning of assessment, the issues in assessment, the difficulties that you may face in the process of assessment, and the proper climate that should be present during assessment and counseling. Interpretation of the result is an important aspect of assessment. Let us discuss about the two approaches to assessment, that is, objective and subjective approach. The reliability and validity of the result depends on the approach to assessment. 4.2.1 Objective approach. The objective approach to assessment offers a construct that limits or excludes the potential interpretations, biases, or influences of the observer or assessor. This approach uses objective perspectives that enable potentially authentic reactions or measurements from the individuals being assessed. This model of assessment is not based on rater interpretation. This makes it possible for a broad use of this type of measurement. Different from subjective measurements, the results are not dependent upon the assessor's analysis and subsequently personal influence. Although this form of assessment can yield informative results with certain types of personality assessments, however, there is less scope for trained or skilled interpretations, individual observations of the test taker, and further investigation upon the individual's personality. Historically, objective tests have been designed to measure a specific faculty of personality, which can limit many other areas that contribute to the individual. For example, many objective measurements are not culturally sensitive. A subject's response on a test which is designed to measure American individuals may indicate a deviation from the norm and label that individual inaccurately because the test is not based on Indian culture. Even within India also there may be differences in response patterns because of cultural differences. 4.2 The subjective approach. A subjective approach elicits the skill of an observer to interpret the responses of the individual given on the test. An example of this type of test would be a projection test like the Rorschach ink blot test. A skilled observer could recognize distortions in thought or personality through the use of subjective tests. Although these types of assessments offer useful insight to an individual's personality, they are difficult to standardize because they are dependent on the abilities of the tester. It is also difficult, if not impossible, to get the same results for an individual if assessed by two different testers. Personal interpretation varies too much to consider these methods reliable. Tests that use objective approach will be more reliable than the tests using the subjective approach to assessment. Objective measurements are designed to be reliable. Objective tests that measure timed responses to questions will always measure accurately how long it takes participants to answer a question. However, the reason an individual takes longer to respond is not considered when evaluating the response. A language barrier may be the cause, affecting the length of response time. This suggests that objective assessments are not as valid as they are reliable. Subjective measurements tend to be more valid in that the intended measurement is accurately assessed and considered. Unfortunately, subjective forms of measurement are not reliable because of the variations between testers. 4.3 The process of assessment in counseling. Assessment occupies a central place in the process of counseling. The success of counseling depends on the success of assessment. When the client comes for counseling, the counselor starts with the preliminary assessment of the client. Initial assessment data may be obtained by the individual or agency doing the referral. In school, the teacher can provide the background information including academic performance, etc. The information is generally based on the intuitive judgment, clinical experience and observational skills of the counselor. The presenting or externally observed problems are often just the iceberg and may be a camouflage for the deeper issues. As the client begins to trust the counselor and find relief from the relatively less troublesome issues, he/she may then begin to express the deeper level conflict, fear, doubt, thus revealing the underlying insecurities and self-perception. Therefore, the counselor has to use an appropriate assessment procedure to reveal the deeper problems and develop an understanding about various issues. The initial assessment is followed by the following steps to gain a deeper understanding about the client's problem. 4.3.1 Intake interview. History taking. History taking is the first important step of assessment. It generally begins with collecting standard identification data such as name, address, age, etc. Case history method. Beyond this information, it is important to note the physical appearance, present symptoms, and behavior of the client, including verbal and non-verbal cues. In taking history, past and present problems must also be taken into account. Before the process of taking history, the client has to be assured of the confidentiality and security of the personal information revealed to the counselor, and no information would be divulged without the consent of the client. The other part of history taking is interview method, observation method by which detailed recording can be done. 4.3.2 Understanding and defining the problem. The next stage in assessment is the problem definition. Understanding the problem from various perspectives and understanding the variables that contribute to the problem. A problem can be assessed from different perspectives. Given below is the outline for the detailed understanding of the problem. 1. Specific aspect related to the problem, associated feelings such as anger, fear, etc., bodily reactions such as headache, shivering, etc., associated thoughts, beliefs, attitudes, etc., self-talk, and interpersonal aspects such as relation with other including family, friends, and peers. 2. Pattern of events contributing to the problems, what happens before the occurrence and after the occurrence. 3. Extent to which the problem exists and affects client's life, how long the problem has been with the client. 4.3.3 Client's coping skills and strengths, what does the client do to cope up with the problem, what kind of support he/she gets, and what are the difficulties. In order to understand the client's problems, we have to perceive it from his/her point of view. The use of variety of assessment techniques and tools is required to determine the causal contributory and the reinforcing factors that are maintaining the problem behavior. The qualitative or subjective assessment has always been an important means of assessing people. Increasingly, professional counselors are becoming inclined to be more objective and exact in their assessment. Thus, knowledge of both qualitative and quantitative methods of assessment becomes an essential part of the training of a counselor. Therefore, the assessment of clients' problems is possible through formal and informal method, that is quantitative approach, also called psychometric or objective method of assessment, as well as informal method, also known as the qualitative approach or descriptive method of assessment. 4.3.4 Methods of assessment. As described above, the counselor needs to apply a variety of methods of assessment. Formal methods of assessment include tests, inventories, ratings, and checklists, whereas informal methods of assessment include observation, case study, interview, self-description, and support system. Tests and inventories are standardized instruments having norm tables, reliability, and validity. On the other hand, observation, interview, case study, etc. are informal ways of collecting information about different aspects. These provide qualitative data. A good assessment plan always includes both quantitative methods of assessment as well as qualitative methods of assessment. 4.4 Components of assessment. There are different components of assessment which the counselor follows. 1. Planning. Planning addresses the following 2 points. A. What do we want to know? B. How should we go about learning it? Making the choice of assessment depends on what is to be measured. Accordingly, the counselor decides on the tools of assessment.
2. Data collection. Data collection for assessment can be qualitative and quantitative in nature, such as case study, observation, interview, etc. The use of both types of assessment will provide complete picture about the individual and his situation, problem. 3. Processing of data. Processing involves inferring. It is the outcome of the data collection process where the counselor analyzes the raw data and puts it in psychological terms in order to reach to the conclusions. 4. Communication of results. Report based on assessment should be precise, relevant, clear, and should communicate the findings in simple, well-defined, exact, and accurate manner. Assessment is a systematic procedure of observing the human behavior. At the fundamental level, it is the way the psychologist or the counselor communicates the result that is very important. The results of the assessment have to be communicated in such a way that it does not lead to any labeling or negative consequence. 4.5 Skills of assessing. There are different skills required on the part of the psychologist, counselor during the process of assessment. The experienced counselor makes use of his or her own skills of observation, empathy, analysis, recognizing, etc. 4.5.1 Skills of observation. It includes behavioral observations such as appearance of the client, body language, demeanor, e.g. sad, fearful, angry expressions, etc., eye contact. 4.5.2 Skill of empathy. It is the fundamental skill used in counseling. A competent counselor always tries to place himself or herself in the client's shoes, thus the counselor tries to experience the same feeling and emotions that the client is feeling. 4.5.3 Skill of analyzing client information. The analytical skill are those that help the counselor to quickly focus on the significant issues, identify gaps in the information, and draw out the relevant information. 4.5.4 Understanding and integrating client information. During counseling session, the client may say things which are not relevant to the current problem, so it is important on the part of the counselor to recall the past information and filter out those which is of no use. And the next step is to integrate the information which was collected from the client and significant others in the client's life, along with one's own impressions and judgments. Assessment or understanding of the problem should lead to formation of counseling goals as to what a change does the client want to achieve. 4.5.5 Developing counseling goals. Purpose of assessment is to help the client set goals and initiate action. Goal setting fulfill the following functions. Goals represent the desired outcome, goals give directions to counseling process, and goals determine what can be achieved. As the process of assessment continues, there is considerable degree of modification and refinement that goes on to help the client to change his, her thinking, feeling and behavior. Goal setting involves a lot of mutual effort as there is a great deal of give and take between the client and the counselor. The client begins to feel that it is not the I only situation but now a we situation where the goals are shared as the client and the counselor agree to work together to achieve them. The main function of goal setting are motivating, educating, clarifying and evaluating. If the client and the problems are correctly understood, and the assessment is made properly, the outcome becomes easy, as it can help in identifying the client's resources and the ability to bring about the changes and to set realistic goals of counseling. This further helps in choosing appropriate therapy, counseling to be provided by the counselor. 4.6 Areas of Assessment. Assessment covers all the areas of our behavior and personality. Broadly, we can say assessment can be in the area of mental ability, interest, aptitude, personality and achievement. 4.6.1 Assessment of mental abilities. Mental abilities is one of the common areas of assessment, especially in case of children. Ability refers to what the person is capable of doing now. Mental ability is also commonly called as intelligence. There are different types of intelligence tests such as verbal, non-verbal, group, individual, performance test. Group tests are administered in group setting whereas individual tests are administered on an one-to-one basis. Both can be verbal as well as non-verbal. However, performance tests are always individually administered. Thus, from the point of view of administration, intelligence tests can be classified as individual and group tests, whereas on the basis of nature of tests, intelligence tests can be verbal, non-verbal and performance type test. Intelligence is all-round mental ability. It has been defined in various ways. Terman, 1921, points out that intelligence is an ability to carry on abstract thinking. Mann defines intelligence as the flexibility of the mind to meet the new situations. According to Freeman, 1923, intelligence is a capacity for successful adjustment by means of traits which we ordinarily call intellectual. The most widely used definition is given by Wechsler. According to him, intelligence is the aggregate or global capacity of the individual to act purposefully, to think rationally and to deal effectively with his environment. There are two aspects of intelligence: the innate potential of the individual and the functional expression of that potential in terms of the individual's behavior. Intelligence tests measure the latter one. Some important tests of intelligence are Stanford Binet Test of Intelligence, Raven Standard Progressive Matrices, Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale, Bhatia's Battery of Performance Test of Intelligence and Cattell's Culture Fair Intelligence Test. It was Binet who first developed the measure for assessing intelligence. Assessment of intelligence is done in terms of mental age and intelligence quotient, IQ. IQ is found by dividing the mental age by chronological age and multiplied by 100. Thus, the formula is IQ equals MA, CAX 100. Intelligence tests are frequently used. However, the scores of intelligence tests are always found to be confounded to some degree by the test taker's past exposure, training, interest, motivation etc. Performance on intelligence tests is also partially dependent on the culture in which the individual has been raised. Although culture-free tests are there, but testing is still affected by culturally derived motives, attitudes and values. Intelligence tests measure, among other things, a person's ability to use and understand words, to handle quantitative data, to remember, to perceive similarities and differences, to reason logically, to handle abstract symbols and to do other things which are required for success in school. Thus, the assessment of intelligence finds usefulness in measuring scholastic aptitude, providing guidance to the learners, educational and vocational counseling, guiding students in cases of poor academic achievement, and understanding student misbehavior and personality problems. 4.6.2 Assessment of Personality. Personality is a broad term which includes all our psychophysical dispositions, behaviors, views, interests and attitudes of an individual. Personality tests include checklists, factor tests, observation techniques, rating scales and personality inventories, multidimensional tests. Checklists are useful for initial screening purpose. It provides initial assessment. The personality inventories or questionnaires suffer from the drawback of social desirability effect. There is a possibility that the subject can fake the answer. The projective tests are not obvious, transparent in assessing the personality. That is, the subject will not be able to know that it assesses his personality. That is why they are called the projective tests. The subject projects his personality unknowingly into the responses he gives to these tests. The projective technique attempts to view and understand personality as a whole. It interprets its components in their interrelationship with other components as well as with whole. However, these tests suffer from the limitation of objectivity in terms of scoring and interpretation. Despite this, these tests are being widely used as it provides useful insight into the personality of the individual. Commonly used projective techniques are thematic apperception test, TAT, Rorschach inkblot test, sentence completion test and word association test. Assessment of personality has significance for many purposes ranging from career selection to personal social guidance. Many issues of interpersonal relationship and adjustment problems require assessment of personality of the individual.
4.6.3 Assessment of Interest and Aptitude. Interest is an integral part of our personality. It is not a separate psychological entity, but merely one of several aspects of behavior. Interest refers to an individual's likings and preferences. An interest is a tendency to become absorbed in an experience and to continue it and to enjoy it. Interest may be intrinsic or extrinsic. E.g., playing hockey or tennis for the sake of it is intrinsic interest, whereas playing it for earning money is extrinsic interest. Thus, extrinsic interests are connected with the pursuit of different activities which give rise to satisfaction or pleasure. Intrinsic interests are those related to the pursuit of the activity itself. Interests can be assessed formally as well as informally. When you ask somebody about her interest, this is eliciting information at an informal level. Informal assessment techniques include client's expression of interests and observation. As a guidance counselor, you can interview the client and collect information regarding the client's interests. On the other hand, formal assessment techniques make use of interest inventories. There are different types of interest inventories. Important ones are Kuda's preference record and Strong's vocational interest blank SWIB. There are also R.P. Singh interest record and Chatterjee's non-language preference record. Assessment of interest has implication for one's job and career. Interest inventories are used in the classification or selection of individual for different occupations. It provides the basis for selection of individuals for different jobs. Interest is also essential in the education sphere. Information about the interests of students is very much useful in choosing particular subjects and courses. Thus, individual differences with regard to interest finds usefulness for both vocational guidance as well as educational guidance and counseling. Aptitude refers to the potential that the individual has. Example, he has aptitude for music. This means he has the potential for music. With suitable training, he'll be able to develop this ability. On the other hand, if a person does not have an aptitude for music, no amount of training can help him develop musical talent. It'll be useful to distinguish the terms aptitude, ability, and achievement here. Ability refers to what the individual is capable of achieving in the present situation, whereas achievement refers to what the individual has been able to learn, achieve. Thus, ability is concerned with the present, whereas achievement depends on past experience and training. Aptitude is concerned with future performance, what the individual can achieve with necessary training input given. Aptitudes are assessed by administering aptitude tests. These tests usually consist of a number of tests. The most commonly used aptitude tests are differential aptitude test, DAT, David's battery of differential aptitude, DBDA, general aptitude test battery, GAT, etc. Aptitude tests are useful in providing helpful information about the individual. They are used in the selection of individuals for different courses as well as professions. They predict success in training or on a job. Assessment of aptitude helps the individual gain better self-understanding and provide guidance in making proper educational and vocational choices. However, the guidance and counselor should consider the results of aptitude tests as broadly indicative of the probable areas of success. The individual should himself analyze and think about the possible choices and take a decision. The counselor may discuss the choice with the individual to help him arrive at an appropriate plan and decision. Assessment of abilities, achievement, interest, aptitude and personality of the individual will provide useful information in several related aspects of the behavior of an individual. These will help the individual understand himself better. The guidance and counselor can make use of these relevant assessment findings to provide effective and successful guidance and counseling. 4.6.4 Assessment of achievement. Achievement tests assess whatever the individual has acquired after some learning or training has taken place. In case of students, it assesses how much he has learned. It measures knowledge and skills attained by the students in a particular subject consequent to the classroom teaching. Achievement tests can be formative, i.e. assessment done during the learning or knowledge acquisition phase, or summative, i.e. assessment done at the end of learning. Achievement tests can also be prognostic or diagnostic. Prognostic achievement tests are used to predict how well an individual is expected to profit from training. On the other hand, diagnostic achievement tests provide information on the performance or achievement of the students in different areas and indicates their strong and weak areas. There are also standardized achievement tests as well as teacher-made, classroom informal achievement tests. Knowledge of achievement scores will help you find out your strength area and weak areas. For example, if you have secured 92% in maths and 78% in English, then you know that mathematics is your strong area. The achievement test scores also indicate the relative standing of a student in a group. This helps in identifying one's position in a group and accordingly try to improve oneself. Assessment of achievement helps provide educational guidance and counseling to the students. Teachers make use of the data for the purpose of classifying, grouping, promoting, diagnosing or evaluating students. Counselors, teachers can make use of achievement scores to promote the students' self-understanding and diagnose the problems faced by the students. 4.6.5 Assessment of creativity. Developing creativity is one of the goals of our school education. For this, we need to identify the creative talent and encourage it in our children. Hence, assessment of creativity is very important. Creativity is multifaceted. It consists of a number of abilities, qualities and skills. Fluency, flexibility, originality and elaboration are the four main criteria of creativity. It refers to something new, novel which has usefulness also for the society. Since creativity is multifaceted, its assessment also has to be multidimensional. As no single method of assessment can provide all the information. There are a number of assessment techniques, informal as well as formal. The informal techniques make use of observation, ratings, checklists, anecdotal records, general, school activities, etc. Formal assessment involves the use of standardized tests, prominent among which are Torrance test of creative thinking, Baker-Mehdi test of creativity, Pasayusha test of creativity. The main feature of creativity tests is that they are open-ended. They allow the respondent to answer in a variety of ways. The creativity tests assess the divergent thinking, the ability to see relationships between two unrelated things objects, put things in a new context, and guess consequences. In contrast, intelligence tests assess convergent thinking. It assesses such abilities as memory, logical, reasoning, and clear thinking. There is a right or wrong answer in intelligence tests, whereas there is no right or wrong answer. A proper conducive environment is essential for the assessment and expression of creativity. Assessment of creativity will enable the counselor to provide proper guidance to the students to actualize their potential. Assessment data will also help the teachers in planning their lessons and providing different types of curricular and non-curricular experiences to enhance their creative potential. Creativity is there in each and every individual. It is a matter of providing the right opportunity, encouraging and rewarding the child for the expression of creativity. 4.7 Summary: the existence of differences among people makes life worth living. However, these differences only create problems in adjustment and interpersonal relationship, in family as well as workplace. Differences in abilities and achievements among the students leads to comparison, labeling, and inferiority feeling. Psychological assessment helps in identifying these differences. Accordingly, the guidance and counselor helps develop self-understanding in the individual and enables him/her to take proper decisions and make suitable choices. In this unit, you learned about the different aspects of psychological assessment. The process of assessment in counseling was described, and the skills that are required in the process of assessment in counseling were explained. You also learned about the different areas of our behavior and personality in which assessment can be carried out. Assessment of these areas will provide helpful information and guidance to the individual. It is important to note here that findings of any particular test should not be seen on its own, but should always be supplements with information from other sources. This will give a comprehensive picture about the particular aspect of the individual. Thank you. Subscribe to our channel for more updates, and we will see you with the next chapter.